The great hall of the Federation Council fell silent as the emergency lights pulsed red across its crystal dome. Around the circular chamber, representatives of 30 peaceful spacefaring species watched in horror as their worst fears came true on the massive display screen before them. "They've broken through the outer defense line," announced First Speaker Bell, his blue-tinted hands shaking as he gripped the podium. "The Crystal Swarm has destroyed our last major fleet in the Nexus sector." The gathered representatives burst into panic. Some wept openly, while others argued in their native tongues. Their civilization, built over 10,000 years of peaceful cooperation, faced extinction within months. In the chaos, Second Speaker Green moved quietly to First Speaker Bell's side. "There might be one option left," she whispered, her 4 eyes blinking nervously. "The Forbidden Archives mention a species from a high-gravity world. They're called humans." Bell turned sharply. "The Deathworlders? That's madness. Their planet was marked as too dangerous to contact." "We're running out of choices," Green replied. "The archives say they evolved on a world with gravity almost twice our standard. Their bodies are dense with muscles, their bones like steel. They survived predators, natural disasters, and countless wars." The first speaker looked at the screen again, watching another Federation colony vanish under the Crystal Swarm's attack. These crystalline beings had appeared 6 months ago, moving through space like a hungry tide, consuming everything in their path. Federation weapons barely scratched their diamond-hard shells. "Show me the file," Bell ordered. The holographic display shifted, showing images of Earth. The council members gasped at scenes of humans climbing mountains, diving into oceans, and building cities in harsh environments. Their research probes had collected this data centuries ago, before marking Earth as too dangerous for contact. "They're primitive," one representative shouted. "They haven't even mastered faster-than-light travel." "But look at their weapons," Green pointed out. "Their military technology, while basic, shows remarkable effectiveness. They understand warfare in ways we never had to learn." First Speaker Bell stood quietly for a long moment. The Crystal Swarm had already destroyed a quarter of their worlds. Their weapons, designed for peacekeeping, proved useless against the crystalline menace. Perhaps they needed someone who understood war. "Prepare a transmission," he ordered finally. "Send them our complete technological database as a gesture of trust. Tell them everything about the Crystal Swarm. And," he paused, "offer them whatever they want in return for help." The message took shape quickly. The Federation's best linguists worked to make it clear and simple. They included detailed star maps, technical specifications, and footage of the Crystal Swarm's attacks. Most importantly, they added their faster-than-light technology designs as proof of their sincerity. "Message ready for transmission," announced the communication officer. "Send it," Bell commanded. "Send it to every major radio telescope and military facility on Earth." The message shot across space at faster-than-light speeds, racing toward the little blue planet that the Federation had once feared to contact. As they waited, First Speaker Bell addressed the council. "I know many of you fear the humans. The archives call them aggressive, territorial, and dangerously adaptable. But right now, we need those very qualities. The Crystal Swarm cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be appeased. Perhaps it takes Deathworlders to fight monsters." On Earth, at exactly 3:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, every major radio telescope picked up the signal. Military installations around the world went on high alert. Scientists worked frantically to decode the complex message as government leaders were awakened from their sleep. In the United Earth Defense Council's underground chamber, Admiral William Ross stared at the translated message on his screen. His hand, steady from 30 years of military service, reached for the secure phone. "Mr. President," he said gravely, "you need to see this. The stars are calling for help, and they're calling for us." Around the world, humanity began to stir. In orbit, the space stations turned their sensors outward. In military bases, soldiers and pilots gathered for briefings. In shipyards, engineers studied the alien technical data with growing excitement. The Deathworlders had heard the call, and for the first time in their history, they found themselves cast not as the monsters of someone else's story, but as the hope of an entire civilization. The United Earth Defense Council chamber buzzed with tension as world leaders gathered for the emergency session. The alien message played on screens around the room, showing scenes of destruction that made even hardened military veterans uncomfortable. Admiral James Stone stood at the podium, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "what we're seeing is an opportunity and a responsibility. The Federation has offered us their complete technological database in exchange for our help, and we're supposed to trust them." General Roberts interrupted, his voice sharp with skepticism. "This could be a trap." Stone pulled up the technical specifications the aliens had shared. "Our scientists have been studying their faster-than-light technology for the past 12 hours. It's real. More importantly, it works. We've already successfully tested a small-scale prototype." The room erupted in surprise murmurs. On the main screen, Dr. Anna White, Earth's leading physicist, appeared via video link. Her eyes showed excitement, despite her obvious exhaustion. "The Federation's technology is incredible," she reported. "Their faster-than-light drive alone would advance us by centuries. But here's what's fascinating. They never weaponize most of their discoveries. Their shields are purely defensive. Their sensors were never adapted for targeting." President Wilson leaned forward. "And these crystal swarm creatures, what do we know about them?" Stone changed the display to show footage of the crystalline beings. They moved through space like swarms of geometric shapes, their surfaces reflecting starlight as they consumed everything in their path. "They appear to be silicon-based life forms," Dr. White explained. "Their outer shells are harder than diamond. But they have a critical weakness. The Federation never noticed it because they don't think like we do. These creatures can't handle rapid temperature changes." Admiral Stone smiled grimly. "And we happen to be experts at making things very hot, very quickly." The Chinese representative spoke up next. "What about our own defense? If we send ships to help them, what protects Earth?" "The Federation's shield technology," Stone answered. "We can have a planetary defense shield operational within weeks. Their technology, combined with our military experience, gives us advantages they never imagined." The debate continued for hours. Military leaders studied combat footage, economists calculated the benefits of alien technology, and politicians argued about the risks and rewards. Through it all, Admiral Stone stood patiently, answering questions and explaining possibilities. Finally, President Wilson called for silence. "We've all seen the evidence. We've all heard the arguments. Now we must decide. Do we hide behind our new shields and let an alien civilization die? Or do we prove that humanity's strength can be used to protect others?" The voting began. One by one, world leaders registered their decisions. The tension grew as the count neared its end. "The vote is complete," announced the Council Secretary. By a margin of 78%, the motion to assist the Federation passes. Admiral Stone immediately stepped forward. "Then, with your permission, Mr. President, I'd like to implement Operation Guardian immediately. We've already selected our best ships for upgrade. The Federation's technology will let us refit them within days instead of months." "Very well, Admiral." President Wilson nodded. "You have full authority. How long until we can launch?" 2 weeks for the first battle group," Stone replied confidently. "We'll start with our newest carriers and destroyers. Dr. White's team has already figured out how to combine our weapons with their shield technology." As the meeting ended, Admiral Stone stayed behind, studying the footage of Federation worlds burning under the Crystal Swarm's assault. He thought about humanity's long history of warfare, how every advancement in technology had been tested first in combat. The Federation feared war so much they never learned its lessons. Now they needed someone who understood both the art of war and the importance of protecting the innocent. "Send word to all military commands," he ordered his aide. "Operation Guardian begins now. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity can do when we fight for something bigger than ourselves." Around the world, military bases sprang into action. Ships were moved into position for upgrading, crews began intensive training with the new technology, and factories switched to war production. Humanity had made its decision. The Deathworlders were going to war, not for conquest or glory, but to save those who couldn't save themselves. Captain Lisa Reed stood at the observation deck of the space station Unity, watching workers in spacesuits swarm around her ship. The Terran Dawn, Earth's newest aircraft carrier, was being transformed. Its hull now gleamed with the silvery sheen of Federation armor, and new weapons bristled along its sides. "Impressive, isn't it?" Admiral Stone stepped up beside her. 2 weeks ago, that ship couldn't leave Earth's orbit. Now it's almost ready to jump across the galaxy. Lisa nodded, her eyes fixed on the massive vessel. The crew's still getting used to the artificial gravity controls. They say it feels strange when it changes during combat maneuvers. "That's our advantage," Stone smiled. "The Federation builds their ships for comfort, keeping gravity at their normal levels. Our people can handle much more. Speaking of which, how are the new fighter pilots doing?" "Better than expected," Lisa replied. "Once they learned that Federation technology lets them pull higher G-forces without blacking out, they started pushing the limits. We're seeing maneuvers that would have been impossible before." Below them, a huge laser cannon was being mounted on the Terran Dawn's bow. The Federation had designed it for scientific research, but Earth's engineers had other ideas. They'd modified it to rapidly heat small areas, perfect for exploiting the crystal swarm's weakness to temperature changes. "Commander Taylor reports the engine upgrades are complete," Lisa continued. "The fusion drive combined with Federation power systems gives us more speed than anything in their records. They never thought to use the technology that way." Stone checked his tablet as new reports came in. 5 more ships had completed their upgrades: the destroyers Thunderchild and Lightning Strike, and the cruisers Iron Will, Defender, and Guardian. Each represented the perfect blend of human military design and alien technology. The station's intercom crackled. "Captain Reed to the training deck. Your pilots are ready for the new simulator run." "Go," Stone nodded. "Get them ready. We launch in 48 hours." Lisa hurried through the station's corridors, passing crews rushing to complete final preparations. In the training deck, 30 pilots stood ready by the new simulators. These machines used Federation technology to create perfect replicas of space combat. "All right, people," she announced, "today we're practicing high-G combat maneuvers against crystalline targets. Remember, these enemies don't think like us. They don't expect ships to deliberately strain their own crews. That's our edge." The pilots strapped in as Lisa watched their practice runs. On the screens, simulated fighters danced through space, pulling turns that would have killed unprotected humans. Federation shields and inertial dampeners let them push harder than ever before, while their weapons turned the crystal swarm's hard shells against them through rapid heating and cooling. "Better," she called out as one pilot successfully shattered a crystal ship. "They're strong, but they're brittle. Make them break themselves." In another part of the station, engineers loaded special missiles designed by Dr. White's team. Each contained a core of superheated plasma surrounded by freezing liquid nitrogen. The temperature difference would create instant stress fractures in the crystalline bean shells. The radio buzzed with updates from around the world. More ships were ready. Crews had completed their training. Supply lines were established. Humanity's first interstellar battle fleet was taking shape. Admiral Stone's voice came over the general channel. "All ships, this is your final preparation alert. In 48 hours, we make history. The Federation thinks they're getting primitive warriors. Instead, they're getting the best-trained, best-equipped fighting force Earth has ever produced." Lisa finished her pilot's training and returned to the observation deck. The Terran Dawn looked different now. Its Earth-built hull was covered in Federation armor that could shrug off hits that would have vaporized normal metal. Its weapons combined human aggressive innovation with alien advanced technology. "Ready for final system checks," a technician reported. "Begin the sequence," Lisa ordered. "Tomorrow we start loading the crew. The day after, we show the galaxy what humans can do." As night fell over this side of the space station, the ships continued to prepare. Lights blazed from a dozen vessels as Earth's first interstellar battle group took its final. The jump through faster than light travel felt like a blink of an eye. One moment, Earth's fleet hovered near Mars. The next, they appeared at the edge of Federation space. 6 Earth warships, led by the massive Terran Dawn, emerged from the flash of light. "Jump successful," reported Navigator Wilson from his station on the Terran Dawn's bridge. All ships present and accounted for. Captain Lisa Reed stood from her command chair, looking at the main screen. A Federation station hung in space before them, its crystalline architecture glowing with internal light. Several small ships rushed to defensive positions. "This is Commander Tom Wells of the Earth vessel Terran Dawn," their communications officer broadcast in the Federation's language. "We're here in response to your request for assistance." For a long moment, silence filled the radio waves. Then a trembling voice responded. "By the stars, you actually came. We didn't think you would really come." The Federation ships moved closer, and their crews got their first look at the humans. Through view screens and observation windows, alien faces showed mixtures of fear, hope, and amazement. "They're so dense," one Federation officer whispered over an open channel. "Their muscles, their bones, they really are Deathworlders." Mark Thompson, the fleet's intelligence officer, studied the sensor readings of the Federation station. "Captain," he called, "their defensive systems are primitive compared to what they gave us. They really don't understand warfare." The Federation's docking bay opened, large enough to accommodate a shuttle from the Terran Dawn. Captain Reed selected her diplomatic team, led by Commander Wells. As they prepared to board, she gave them final instructions. "Remember," she said, "they're scared of us. Show them we're here to help, not conquer." The shuttle landed smoothly in the Federation station. As the team stepped out, they immediately noticed the difference in gravity. The station's artificial gravity was set to Federation standard, making it feel light and weak to the humans. First Speaker Bell waited to greet them, flanked by other Federation representatives. His eyes widened as the humans walked confidently in what to his people was extremely low gravity. "Welcome," he said, his translator converting his words to English. "We're grateful for your response, but we must hurry. The crystal swarm approaches one of our core worlds." Commander Wells nodded. "Show us your tactical displays. We need to understand what we're facing." In the station's command center, the Federation officers watched in surprise as the humans moved quickly through the data, asking sharp questions about military positions and resource locations. "You've never concentrated your forces," Thompson observed, studying their defense patterns. "You spread them out trying to protect everything." "We believed it was the most fair approach," Bell admitted. "Each world deserved protection." "Fair, but not effective," Wells replied. "Captain Reed needs to see this." Back on the Terran Dawn, Reed reviewed the tactical data. The crystal swarm was moving exactly as predicted, following patterns that any predator would use. They attacked the weakest targets first, building their strength before taking on harder objectives. "They're not just crystal formations," she realized. "They're hunters, and they've never faced prey that could truly fight back." The Federation representatives jumped as alarms blared across their stations. "The swarm," Bell cried out. "They've appeared near Colony 7, sooner than we expected." Reed straightened in her command chair. "All Earth ships, battle stations. Commander Wells, get back to the ship. First Speaker Bell, we'll show you how Deathworlders fight." The Federation crews watched in awe as the Earth ships moved into formation. Their engines flared brighter than any Federation ships, their crews handling acceleration that would have knocked Bell's people unconscious. "Colony 7 is 3 light-years away," Bell said. "It will take." He stopped as the Earth fleet vanished in 6 flashes of light, jumping directly into combat range of the crystal swarm. The Deathworlders were about to demonstrate why their world had produced such powerful warriors, and why that strength could be used to protect as well as destroy. Colony 7's space buzzed with activity as Earth's fleet arranged its defenses. Captain Reed stood on the Terran Dawn's bridge, watching Federation ships practice the new battle formation she had designed. "They're learning quickly," Commander Wells noted, "but they still pull back when the G-forces get too high." "That's fine," Reed replied. "We don't need them to fight like us. We just need them to keep the swarm distracted while we hit them from the sides." On the main screen, Federation pilots struggled to copy the aggressive maneuvers that human fighters performed easily. Their ships were fast and well-built, but their crews couldn't handle the same physical stress that humans had evolved to endure. Mark Thompson's voice came over the comm. "Captain, you need to see this. We've analyzed the crystal swarm's approach pattern." In the tactical room, Thompson displayed a 3D map showing the enemy's movement. "They always attack in a spiral pattern," he explained. "They're like sharks circling their prey, but that means we can predict where they'll be." Reed studied the pattern, a plan forming in her mind. They've never faced an enemy that could match their speed. They don't know how to deal with targets that can outmaneuver them. The Federation's local commander, Admiral Gray, joined them in the tactical room. His 4 eyes widened as he watched human fighters pulling tight turns at high speed. "Impossible," he muttered. "The G-forces in those turns would kill any of our pilots." "That's why we're having your ships focus on defensive positions," Reed explained. "Your shields are excellent. Hold the center, protect the colony. We'll handle the attack runs." In the colony's main hangar, human engineers worked with Federation technicians, modifying their weapons. The Federation's energy beams, designed for mining asteroids, were being converted into precise cutting tools that could slice through crystal at specific angles. "See these stress points?" a human engineer pointed out. "Hit them with rapid temperature changes, and the crystal shatters along natural break lines. It's basic geology combined with physics." Dr. White's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, the sensor modifications are complete. We can now track the internal structure of each crystal ship. Their weak points show up clearly on targeting displays." Reed called a final briefing for all ships' commanders. The Federation officers sat nervously as she laid out the battle plan, their translators working overtime to keep up with her quick, precise instructions. "Remember," she emphasized, "they think like predators because they are predators. But every predator has basic attack patterns. We'll use those patterns against them." The human crews moved with practiced efficiency, loading special missiles and calibrating their new weapons. Years of military drills combined with advanced alien technology created a level of readiness the Federation had never seen before. "First wave approaching," Thompson reported. "Long-range sensors show at least 300 crystal ships." Reed activated the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, battle positions. Federation vessels, move to your defensive coordinates. Earth fighters, prepare for launch." The Federation crews watched in amazement as human pilots ran to their fighters, moving easily in the low gravity. Each fighter had been upgraded with Federation shields and engines, but kept their human-designed weapons. "They're so calm," Admiral Gray observed. "How can they be so calm facing such odds?" "Because this is what we trained for," Reed answered. "Not just these past weeks, but for all of human history. We learned warfare the hard way, fighting ourselves. Now we're using those skills to protect others." Warning signals flashed across all screens. The crystal swarm had entered the outer sensor range. Their crystalline bodies reflected starlight, making them look like a cloud of diamonds moving through space. "All ships, ready positions," Reed commanded. "Federation defenders, power up your shields. Earth fighters, launch when ready." The hangar bays opened, and squadrons of Earth fighters poured out into space. Their engines glowed bright against the darkness as they moved into attack formation. The Federation ships formed a protective ring around the colony, their shields creating an overlapping barrier. Remember your training. Read broadcast to all ships. Fight smart. Fight together. Show them what happens when you threaten those under human protection. The crystal swarm drew closer, unaware that they were about to face something entirely new, a species that had mastered the art of war through countless generations of conflict, now using that mastery in defense of peace. The void of space lit up as the crystal swarm made its first pass at Colony 7's defenses. Hundreds of crystalline shapes, each glowing with internal energy, rushed toward the defensive line. Captain Reed watched from the Terran Dawn's bridge as the battle began. "All fighters, execute attack pattern Delta," she commanded. "Remember your training. Hit and fade. Don't let them predict your movements." Earth's fighters swooped into action, moving with impossible speed. The crystal swarm, used to easy victories against scattered Federation ships, found themselves facing an entirely different kind of enemy. "First blood to us," announced Flight Leader Jack Porter as his squadron's special missiles struck true. The rapid temperature changes shattered 3 crystal ships instantly, their fragments spinning off into space. The crystal swarm reacted with visible confusion. Their tight formation broke apart as they tried to track the human fighters that moved too quickly for their usual hunting patterns. Federation observers watched in amazement as Earth pilots pulled maneuvers that would have knocked out any of their own crews. "Federation defense line, hold position," Reed ordered as she saw some ships starting to waver. "Let them come to you. Your shields are stronger together." The crystal swarm split into smaller groups, trying to find weak points in the defense. But wherever they turned, human fighters were there to meet them. The space around Colony 7 became a deadly dance of light and crystal. "They're trying to regroup," Thompson called from his tactical station. Standard Predator response. "They're falling back to reform their hunting pattern." Reed smiled grimly. "Not this time. Terran Dawn, battle stations, all cruisers, follow my lead. Time to show them what a real warship can do." The massive Earth ships moved forward, their engines flaring bright. Federation observers gasped as the human vessels accelerated at speeds that would have crushed their own crews. The crystal swarm, for the first time in their existence, found themselves being hunted. "Main weapons, fire when ready," Reed commanded. "Target their stress points." The Terran Dawn's modified Federation weapons fired, sending precise beams of energy that heated specific points on the crystal ships. Immediately following, human-designed Creo missiles struck the same spots. The temperature difference was catastrophic for the crystalline beings. Dozens of crystal ships shattered under the assault. The survivors tried to scatter, but Earth's fighters had them surrounded. Every escape route led to more attacks, more precise strikes at their structural weaknesses. "Federation ships, advance," Reed ordered. "Press the advantage." Inspired by the human success, the Federation ships moved forward, their defensive formation becoming an attacking wave. Their shields, originally designed for protection, now served as battering rams against the weakened crystal swarm. "They're breaking," Thompson announced excitedly. "Their formation is completely scattered." The battle turned into a rout. Without their coordinated hunting patterns, the crystal swarm fell into chaos. Some tried to flee, only to run into waiting human fighters. Others attempted to fight back, but found their usual tactics useless against enemies who could outmaneuver them. "Captain," Wells reported from his station, "we're picking up similar battles across Federation space. The swarm is retreating everywhere they face human ships." The news spread quickly through both human and Federation crews. The crystal swarm, which had seemed unstoppable just days ago, was being driven back by the combined might of Federation shields and human combat skills. As the last crystal ships fled or were destroyed, cheers erupted across all channels. Federation crews celebrated in disbelief, while human pilots whooped and hollered as they returned to their carriers. First, Speaker Bell's voice came over the main channel. This is impossible. You've done what we thought couldn't be done. The Crystal Swarm is retreating from all Federation space. Reed looked at the tactical display, watching the last enemy signals vanish. Not impossible, she replied. Just required a different way of thinking. Your technology and our combat experience made the perfect combination. In the days that followed, Federation scientists worked closely with human military experts. They began understanding how to defend themselves, learning not just to rely on shields but to actively protect their territory. On the Terran Dawn's observation deck, Reed stood with Admiral Stone, watching Federation ships practicing new combat maneuvers. The Federation Council has proposed a permanent defense alliance. Stone informed her. They want Earth to help train their crews, teach them how to protect themselves. Reed nodded, watching a Federation ship successfully complete a complex evasive pattern. They're learning quickly. They just needed to understand that being strong doesn't mean you have to be cruel. That's why they called us, Stone replied. They needed warriors who could fight without becoming monsters. Earth's history taught us that lesson the hard way. News of the victory spread across Federation space. Stories of human bravery and skill became legend among alien species who had once feared the Deathworlders. Federation crews proudly served alongside human officers, learning the art of defense from those they had once considered too dangerous to contact. The Crystal Swarm never returned to Federation space. Perhaps they learned that some prey could bite back, or maybe they simply found easier hunting grounds in the vast galaxy. But their brief reign of terror had changed the Federation forever. 1 month after the battle, the Federation Council held a ceremony to formally welcome Earth into their alliance. First, Speaker Bell stood before representatives of 100 worlds to make the announcement. We once feared the humans, he declared, calling their world too dangerous to contact. We were right about their strength, but wrong about their hearts. They proved that being powerful doesn't mean being cruel. Being warriors doesn't mean being conquerors. The Deathworlders came not to destroy, but to protect, and in doing so, they taught us that true strength lies not in avoiding conflict, but in standing up for those who cannot stand alone. Captain Reed, standing with her crew at the ceremony, felt pride not just in their victory, but in what it represented. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger galaxy, not as conquerors or savages, but as protectors. Ready to head home? Stone asked her after the ceremony. Reed looked out at the Federation ships now bearing Earth insignias alongside their own. Not yet, she smiled. We still have a lot to teach them, and maybe a few things to learn ourselves. The story of how humanity answered the Federation's desperate call became legend throughout the galaxy. But more importantly, it marked the beginning of a new era. The Deathworlders had proven themselves to be not just mighty warriors, but worthy allies and trusted friends. As Earth's fleet prepared for their next training mission with Federation crews, Reed thought about how far they'd come. They had taken their world's long history of conflict and turned it into a force for peace. The galaxy had called for help, and humanity had answered not with conquest, but with protection. The Deathworlders had finally found their place in the galaxy, not as monsters to be feared, but as guardians to be welcomed. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all.